Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Heffe Shop Shop. This week we're going to pull the engine out of the Ke25. So I'm going to take the plugs out and just crank the engine over, make sure it's all free and happy and there's no water in there because I did wash the engine bay. Maybe a bit of water in the carby, that sort of thing. Put a bit of WD-40 in each cylinder because it hasn't moved in a long time, and sort of just crank it over a bit, try and get a bit of oil pressure through it. Put the plugs back in, put some fuel straight into the carby, and probably run a little fuel tank to this like I normally do. You've seen me do that a million times. I just don't like using the stuff that's in the tank because it's been sitting for 10 years, so the fuel's probably the best part of 10 years old. So I'll pull this off, put a bit of fuel in a bottle, and then the fuel pump can suck straight from there and go into the carby. So then chuck some fresh stuff in the carby so it fires straight away. I'll try and get it to kick over for long enough that it sucks fuel from the bottle to the carb, and then hopefully we should have some business. So I'll put you on time lapse and I'll take the plugs out and do all that stuff that I just said, and when I start cranking it I'll catch up with you again. So I've taken the plugs out and put a bit of CRC in there and give it a spin over by hand with a ratchet down the bottom there. I've just hooked up a battery, so let's just give it a bit of a crank and see if we can get it to turn over, obviously, and see if it chucks anything out of the engine. Absolutely nothing on the key. That's a great start. And I know I've got power. So let's dodgy this. So I've just tried to jiggle the starter plug, which is just in there, the terminal, see if it even was loose or something. The oil pressure sensor was loose, so put that back in. Just chuck this screwdriver, spanner, what do you call it, socket. Alright, so we've got a wiring issue. Starter does work, so I'm going to have to rig up a switch or something down there and just give it another shot. Okay, so I just tried the key again to see if I freed up the starter motor. It's still not working, so I'm just going to chuck this in there and keep my arm free of this fan and see if I can kick it over for long enough that it tries to crank over. Ow, I got zapped on that one. That was fun. So I just grabbed a pry bar instead with a insulated handle, and it's a little bit longer, so it might make it a little bit easier. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's put the plugs back in. Alright, so plugs are back in, leads are back on, fuel is in a bottle and attached. Fuel feed and return are into the bottle. So I'm just going to spray a little bit of brake cleaner into the throttle body or the carby, and then give it a crank over with the pry bar in there again like I showed you a minute ago. I have got the ignition on, so the coil should be on and all that sort of stuff. So here we go, let's just give it a shot. Alright, so here's the real question, will it run? Well, that couldn't have been easier. Alright, so it ran once pretty easily. We obviously ran out of brake cleaner in the carb. So let's do that again, crank it over again. Not bad. Alright, so this time I'm going to try and put some brake cleaner in the carb, crank it up, and then continue putting brake cleaner in the carb to continue making it run. We'll see how we go. It's a bit hard with one hand, or one person. you go, it does run. That is quite surprising. So it doesn't rev very nicely, and the carby actually got stuck on at the very beginning there. So I think the timing's probably out because it runs pretty badly. We know we've got fresh fuel, so it shouldn't be that. And it's obviously getting spark because it fires up. It's obviously getting air because the carby's taking brake cleaner. So the main issue I can see would be timing. So on that note, it cut out just a second ago, but it's still getting fuel, so that's a bit strange. I'll try and fire it up again. I think it was feeding off of the bottle rather than the brake cleaner. So I'll just try and fire it up again and see if it will run on idle. See, idle's pretty high, which is also strange. It's also pissing out fuel from the carby. That's a great sign. I don't want to keep this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I was hoping it was good. Everyone always puts aftermarket carbies on these, but they always suck. Because the carbies you can get are all too big. And this one leaks. So obviously the fuel that has gone into the carby is now leaking through the front of the carby. So it's definitely fuel. I'm going to have to disconnect something. Just going to have to put a rag under here to catch it and not fire it up again while the rag's in there, obviously. So it does run. There we go. All right, so now that we've got it running, I can probably pull it out and clean it up or get a different carby or whatever I'm going to do. But I have got a 7K like I said before, so it's coming out. I don't want it. And now we're going to pull the engine out. So I'm going to take the radiator out, take the tubes off and everything, and then the exhaust is pretty much already disconnected, but I'll check that. There's like 4 wires on it. Take the fuel system out and then drop the whole lot, subframe, struts and engine and gearbox all down at once and roll it all out the front. So let's get stuck into that. So last night it ended up getting pretty dark while I was working on this thing. So instead of taking the actual engine and gearbox out, I started stripping the bay down, which you would have seen. So I got most of the plastic trim clips off, most of the wiring out. I still need to drill that plate off. And all the trims and clips and screws and everything. So most of the bay is pretty stripped. I've just got to take the engine and gearbox out, the brake master, the steering and the last few brake lines, get the fuel lines out of the way, and then put the wiring back into the cabin, and then that's pretty much the engine bay stripped entirely. So it's a good start for one day's work, so there's still a lot of work to do obviously, but for now let's just get this engine out. So yesterday I had a bit of a clean up with the Corollas. So the Ke20 with the blue-green paint, this one isn't going to be a whole bunch of use to the 25 or the early 20 that I've got. So that's going to scrap. I haven't cut anything off of it, but it is fully stripped. And then there's the floor from the primered 20. So I cut the rear quarters and the boot section off, the rear window section off. The postman just got here. Then we've got the engine from the Volkswagen, we've got the rear axle from the Seor, and then 3 44 gallon drums full of just random stuff. So I'm going to go dump all of this, I'll scrap it all, and then I've got another 20 that I need to pull apart and cut up, and the bonnet from the 25. And then I've got this stout front end as well. So go dump this and then start loading it up again. What happened, Tim?
He did.
The ever reliable 31 has become unreliable. How long have you owned this for?
8 years.
8 years. This is the first time you've actually needed help on the side of the road.
Yeah.
This is a spicy boy also. So Tim just left my house like an hour ago. It's currently 12:30. He needs help. So help. But I'm going to roast him on the internet. Bloody should have bought a Toyota.
How's your Toyota going, Jeffrey?
My Toyotas are great. The ones that have engines run, that's about the best I got for you. So I think the sensor died. So we're just replacing that. Well, Tim's replacing that. I'm hosing him. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to try something else, of course. And if it does work, I'll follow him home and then I'll go home. Alright, crank angle sensor is fixed, we think. Got all the tools away. Tim's going to give it a test run. Oh, that's alright, I'll just make my own light. That's cool. Yeah, that's fair enough. Alright, test start number 1. Fingers crossed this is the only test start. That's not good. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and we made it home. It was
never left me stranded.
It made it home without under its own power. It was a fuse for the ignition, did you say?
Yeah, repeatedly popping.
Yeah, so there's something earthing and sparking and popping and banging and being bad. But it's home and it's late and I'm tired. Midweek adventures.